Hey everyone, welcome back to Kevin Reviews. I just finished watching Blade 2, the sequel to the 1998 Blade, and no Blade impression this time. Unlike the first one was enough. This is directed by Guillermo del Toro, who many of you know, who has done many projects, Mexican filmmaker and art author. Famous films that I like or I've seen is like Pan's Labyrinth, um, Pacific Rim, and there's another one, Shape of Water. So yeah, he's done a lot. He's well regarded as the one of the best filmmakers you've ever had and ever had. And this is also written by Blade Two is also written by Marv Wolfman, Gene Coolin, and David S. Goyer returns this time after the first Blade. And we also returning is Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson as Blade and Whistler, and we have new casts including Ron Pearlman, Lenore Varela. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Norman Reedus and Luke Goss, and many others. But suffice to say, um, we have a new sequel that continues Blade's mission to destroy all vampires. So, like I mentioned, I think in my first in the first Blade movie, I did not see the Blade films till like eventually later and during the pandemic. Um, and while I was probably old enough to see Blade 2, I don't think there was any chance I could, have watched it with, my folks around, and because they weren't into vampires or horror or anything like that. So, but I remember catching it a few times on TV, on cable, but I never stuck with it. So, and besides, even if I did try to see it, I would have been lost like in the first one. Um, so yeah, so I mean, I did see this before. I saw this during the pandemic once. I think I remember liking it. I do remember liking it quite a bit. So after rewatching again. I think it has improved a bit. But here's my review. So in Blade 2, Wesley Snipes is still on his crusade to eliminate vampires wherever he sees them. That is until one night he gets help. He is asked for help by Nissa, a vampire, to help her take down another vampire that has mutated or evolved, um, called Nomak, who is known as a Reaper. Um, and so Blade, agrees to help, and he has to team up with other vampires especially this vampire group called the Blood Pack, to define the Reapers and destroy them and kill Nomak. So that's basically the plot. There is a lot more going on, and I will also say, if you have not seen the first Blade nor this sequel, I would suggest uh, back, clicking out of the video, because I might give a little bit of spoiler here. Because Blade is still great and is pitch perfect, by Wesley Snipes. Um, Chris Christopherson does return, and if you remember in the first film, Chris Christopherson's character Whistler was killed, but now he's brought back through kind of this confusing, not kind of this confusing, but it's more like they retcon his death in a way, because the first one was so successful that they wanted to bring Chris Christopherson back as Whistler, and fair enough. It doesn't entirely make sense overall, but still, he's there. Um, they do kind of also give us intro about this catch up. If you have not seen the first film, they do give you enough, like, an intro to like who Blade is, what he does, and some information on what happened in the first film. So in that case, the other characters are great. I think Ron Perlman is great, though he doesn't give a lot to do. He just kind of does one or two lines and then just kind of walks off, kind of being cool and being evil. He's not a nice a character. Um, Nissa, played by Leonore Varela, is pretty good, though. Again, I wish they developed more of her character. She more ties into the story later on. Norman Reedus is good. I haven't seen Norman Reedus in a lot of roles. I know he's famous for The Walking Dead, especially, which I have not seen at all. He was also in Death Stranding and the game Death Stranding, and was also appeared in the PT, the playable trailer for Silent Hills, that sadly got canceled. Um, and so, and then we have Nomak, played by Luke Goss, who plays a Reaper, and basically the Reaper was like a bald, veiny, white glass eyes vampire. But there's a lot more going on because now his face comes out like kind of like the Predator in the Predator film. It's gnarly looking. It's probably the best thing in the movie is the makeup or design of the Reapers. Even though it looks little, it's effective. And even when you get to see these Reapers, these that able to do whatever they do, and they seem to have more going on, even strengths that are surpass the vampires even. Um, it's interesting, and I like the fact that they kind of make it like this the Reaper virus that plagued this one vampire Nomak to make um, make him evolve. Like it's a cancer growing, but it does make him stronger for some reason. It's kind of interesting how they explore that. I think. Um, let's see. The action's great. The choreography, you know, is done very well. There are moments where it doesn't always make sense. Like there's a moment where Blade jumps off a wall, but it's not. He doesn't go that high just to do it. It's like one step very low, just so he can like you know, do a punch or slice or whatever. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know. There's some questionable shots or stuff that feel like they should have been you know asked for a retake on those type of action scenes. They also use CGI this time for the action scenes, and they don't hold up very well, unfortunately. But granted, you could argue that it's their way of experimenting, and it does feel like they try to use the action similar to say X Men 2000, so they can get some of the action scenes to work and incorporate more of the vampires and Reapers' powers, including Blade's powers or abilities of a vampire. So I think that makes sense. You just kind of got to go, kind of say this is a film from 2002 that probably didn't work then, definitely doesn't work now, but you kind of give it some credit, or give it some credit for trying at least, or cut him some slack. So it makes sense. Um, I guess in terms of the villain, like I said, I like the design. I think the makeup design is fantastic. The villain, the main antagonist in this one, A, it's complicated. B, Nomak, I don't think is quite as menacing. Well, I'm not menacing in terms of his performance per se, um, in terms of character. But it's just more like the look is what really helps him carry the film. In some ways, I do prefer Deacon Frost a little bit more because at least, while he does act more like a child at times, granted he was a half breed who doesn't know any better. So and he's letting his thirst consume him. But this one at least has more purpose. I mean, you know, he's not a smart. So Deacon Frost wasn't really necessarily a smart vampire, but he did have act menacingly and has more character to him. I think so. I hope I'm making sense. I'm sorry if I go off on a tangent there, but let's see. The writing I think is good. There is a line that I remember watching from Doug Walker, Nostalgia Critic, where Ron Pearlman as Reinhardt says to Blade, "Do you blush?" Which from what I remember from the review, is considered a racist term against black people, a derogatory term, derogatory saying. Um, I don't know entirely. And then from what I also understand, people didn't seem to make sense because is it a derogatory term for black people in the scene, or is it because he's a vampire that he can't blush? So, I mean, it's kind of a complicated line, so it doesn't always seem to work really. So, but the point was to make us hate Ron Perlman's character. I think that works. It works okay, but probably didn't need the line. Um, I don't know. I think overall, I'm gonna give Blade Two. It's kind of hard because I think the first one's better per se, but the second one does up the ante a little bit and add some new stuff. Um, they there are moments where that doesn't always make sense. Like they do add some twists that doesn't quite make sense or just feels pointless. But I think overall, I'm going to give Blade Two 4 stars. I maybe four stars or 3.5. I think four is at least generous enough. I think this is a great film. It's still a very fun film, even despite the flaws. So if you like the first Blade, I think you'll love the second Blade. Um, but yeah, I think that's it overall. That's all I can say. So, what are your thoughts on Blade Two? Leave in the comments below. Leave a like or dislike on my review. If what you thought, and feel free to subscribe to my channel. And I hope to see you again in the next review. Bye.